In this video, I'll be painting a Primaris captain for my Dark Angels army. Hello everyone, this is Jason from Warhammer Gaming, and for my next addition to my Dark Angels army, I'll be painting this Primaris captain. Looking forward to seeing how this turns out, so without further ado, let's get going. After assembling this model, the first thing that I did was prime it with Gray Seer spray paint. Next, we're going to apply a coat of Caliban Green over most of the armor and the inner frame of the shield. Next, we're going to apply Corvus Black onto the following areas: the belt around the waist and on the back of the armor, the gaps in the armor such as around the elbows and shoulders, and then the exhaust ports on the backpack, including the square ones and the round ones. Next, we're going to apply Mournfang Brown onto the leather parts of this gun holster. Now we're going to use Wraithbone to paint the robes, any purity seals or parchment strips, and then the skeleton that's on the shield. Now we're going to apply Leadbelcher onto the following areas of the model: the belt buckles, the chains around the waist and the wrist, the handle, the circle, and the wires on the back of the shield. On the front of the shield, the rings and studs that are on the skeleton, the bottom of the gun holster, the button on the holster, and then the gun handle. We're going to dry brush the edges of the exhaust ports on the backpack. And lastly, most of the pommel and hilt of the sword, except the skull symbol, and then the wire on the sword blade. Next, I'm going to be applying Khorne Red to the handle of the sword. Next, we're going to apply Corax White to the lights at the end of the wires on the back of the shield, at the end of the sword, as well as the whole sword blade itself. Next, we're going to be using Retributor Armour to paint the following areas. All the skull symbols on the model, including the skull and cross on the arm, as well as the halo and skull symbol like on the backpack. However, not the skull that's on the shield here. The top part of the knee pads, the relics that are hanging from the waist and the wrist, the chest aquila, the iron halo, the outer frame of the shield, as well as the halo around the skull, and the outer frame on the shoulder pads, including the wing and skeleton symbol that's on the right pad. Next, we're going to be using Dawnstone in order to paint all the rocks that are on the base. Now we're going to apply Flayed One Flesh over the exposed parts of the head. Alright, so for the next few steps, I'll be doing some dry brushing, edge highlighting, and applying contrast and shade paints. As such, I think this will be a good time to do some touch-ups and correct any errors that I've made. Okay, so I think that looks a bit cleaner now. Next, we're going to dry brush the top of the green armor with Warpstone Glow in order to give it a little bit of a gradient effect. Now we're going to edge highlight the green armor using Moot Green. Now we're going to apply a mixture of 1 part Dark Angel's Green Contrast Paint and 3 parts Contrast Medium all over the green armor. Next, we're going to apply Nuln Oil onto the following areas. Any place that's painted in Leadbelcher, the handle of the sword, the gun holster, as well as the skeleton except for the eyes and the parchment strips. So, quick note, I just noticed that the hourglass was painted white on both the top and bottom half, which wouldn't make sense because that means that it would be completely filled with sand. So I just painted the top half in black, so now the sand is all on the bottom half. Now we're going to use Skeleton Horde Contrast Paint to paint the following areas: the paper parts of the Purity Seals, any parchment strips, the back of the robe, and most of the robe on the front under the relics here. And we're also going to let the Skeleton Horde Contrast Paint pool in the valleys of the robe so it creates a shadow-like effect. The next thing we're going to do is reapply Wraithbone onto the robes, but we're going to leave the valleys of the robes alone. Now we're going to apply a little bit of Pallid Witch Flesh to the very peaks of the robes. Next, we're going to use Reikland Fleshshade and apply it to all the areas painted in Retributor Armour except for the Hourglass. Next, we're going to apply Blood Angel's Red onto the wax part of the Purity Seals. Next, we're going to apply Frostheart to the following areas: the sword blade, the lights on the back of the shield, and the eyes on the skeleton. Next, we're going to be using Agrax Earthshade on the areas of the base that are not painted in Dawnstone. Now we're going to apply a coat of Guilliman Flesh over the exposed part of the head. Alright, so the face and head looks okay, and if you want you can actually stop right here. But if you want to give it a little bit extra, then you can dry brush some Flayed One Flesh over the head, particularly on the raised areas like the nose and the eyebrows. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to do is paint these small metal studs over the eyes, this big one on the side of the head, and a little hard to see here, but there's a wire on the back of the head there, and I'm going to be using Leadbelcher to do that. Now, because of how small these things are, I'm going to have to hold it pretty close to my face, and because of that, I won't be able to record it, so I'm just going to do it and show you the aftermath. So, here's my completed Dark Angels Primaris Captain, and as usual, I wanted to make a few comments about it. First off, the model originally had a dead Necron on the base, but I removed it. Truth be told, I wanted to try basing it with something else such as maybe sand and some plants, but that'll be sometime in the future. Another thing to note is that this model is definitely, for lack of a better term, busy. It has a lot of details that admittedly were sometimes hard to get to with my brush. As such, going forward, if I encounter a model as busy as this one, I'll probably paint some of the pieces separately. For example, for this model, I probably should have painted the shield and the sword arm separately from the main body. Lastly, I'm still learning how to paint faces. I think I did an okay job with this one, but I definitely need more practice to get better doing it. Anyways, that's the end of my video, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. As always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and be sure to check out my other social media accounts in the description below. Until next time, this is Jason from Forcehammer Gaming, signing off.